Okay, good afternoon, everybody. I call this meeting to order at 3:02 p.m. Of the Montgomery County Board of Elections on February 26, 2024. Uh, we not only have a quorum present, we have the entire membership present. Thank you all for being able to join. I need to um, pull my agenda here, but I do have a couple of comments that I wanted to make. Hang on a second, folks. Okay, now I have it. Uh, a couple of different comments to make. First, I wanted to say I'm not sure if it's appropriate to say welcome or to say welcome back to Jennifer Daly and Julia Douglas, who are uh, we I think we've all had all of us who've been on the board have interacted with them at different times at the canvas or in around the office, but they have recently been hired as permanent staff, as Boris mentions in his director's report. So I wanted to express my gratitude for their joining us in that capacity, and we're thrilled to have them as permanent staff. I believe that all of you saw an email from our council suggesting that we have an in-person meeting on April the 15th in order for as many of us as possible to be sworn in for Board of Canvassers on that day. We need to be sworn in before the canvass starts on April the 22nd. So we have traditionally done that at a board meeting. I'm not going to ask people to respond at this moment, but if you could make sure that you let Kevin know if you're not able to join us on that day for an in-person meeting. You may need to go to the courthouse to get sworn in individually. That's not that big a deal, except that it's an inconvenience for you. Some of you may remember if you were on the board for the 2020 election, they did some swearing in the driveway at the courthouse because we weren't able to go inside. So I don't know whether they're still doing driveway swearing-ins, but in any event, if you can make it on April the 15th, that would be much better. Um, Daniel, did you have something you wanted to say?
Yes, Mr. President, and thank you. Thank you to everyone. I just wanted to notify my colleagues and also viewers that I will be on and off camera because unfortunately I had a emergency surgery that just took place and I came home. And so I cannot sit at one place for too long. So I have to be getting up and sitting back down. And I don't want to cause a distraction. So that's why I will be turning my camera off. But in respect for my colleague and the public, I want to make sure I let you know why I'm turning my camera on and off. It's not because I don't have my earpiece like the president of the board.
Well, thank you, Daniel, for that. We hope you recover quickly. We appreciate you're not making us watch you pace around the room because that would probably make me a little nervous to see all that. But no, very much, and really appreciate you're making the effort to join us today because, as I told you, I think that that's a pretty good excuse to miss a meeting, but we appreciate the fact that you didn't. So
Well, I always wanted to wear my Black History Month tie, so that's what's another reason why. Again, I
yeah, yeah. Well, it's a very nice tie, and I guess postponing the meeting would not have been a good idea. So anyway,
thank you.
okay, thank you. Um, Additions or changes to the agenda? Uh,
Uh,
Go ahead, Kevin.
Mr. President, I guess the only thing I would say is that at the end of the meeting, as reflected by the agenda, there'll be a closed session to discuss the privacy or reputation of an individual concerning a matter not of public business.
Um, Thank you for that announcement. And we will do that at the conclusion of our public agenda. I will also, just for the benefit of those who are viewing, since I think board members already know, that when it comes time for our discussion of legislation, I'm going to have two motions on two different positions that I'm going to encourage the board to take on pieces of legislation. One of them relates to Governor Moore's proposed bill to make it a crime to threaten election officials, and one of them relates to legislation that would govern how recounts are conducted, a subject about which our board knows way too much. So in any event, I just wanted to let people know that. Boris, you have your hand up. Please go ahead.
Just very briefly for the board members and the council, Lisa sent out. Lisa will send a link for the executive session that will be separate from this one, so we'll have it in your inbox in the course of the meeting.
That's perfect. Many thanks to Lisa for doing that, and for multitasking while we're meeting. So thank you. Okay, next on the agenda, disclosure of campaign contributions, attendance at fundraisers. Does anyone have anything to disclose? If you do, please raise your hand. Okay, seeing none. Next is public comments. Boris or Lisa, could you let us know if we have any public comments?
My understanding, Mr. Michael Fletcher signed up and send the comments to the board. I don't know if Mr. Fletcher is online, so Jerry can promote him to speak.
I was also about to say that I didn't know that I had received his comments, but now I see that it arrived early this afternoon and I just haven't had a chance to look at it yet. Mr. Fletcher, welcome again. Please turn on your camera if you're comfortable doing that, and proceed when ready. You have the same 3 minutes that all of our commenters have.
All right, Mr. President. I think I've got my camera on now. There we go.
Yes, we can see you, and hopefully you can see us.
All right. I have some short comments for the board, and I'll just proceed. These comments are in the form of a heads up, essentially. In the near future, a report will be given to the Maryland State Board of Elections by a team of dedicated Maryland citizens. The report will document the results of a statewide effort to verify the accuracy of the Maryland State Voter Registration Database. The team includes trained data scientists, computer programmers, statisticians, attorneys, and a group of dedicated registered voters from across all 24 Maryland jurisdictions. The goal of this effort is to restore faith in our elections by identifying vulnerabilities in our election system and working together with boards of elections officials, taking a proactive approach to eliminating the inaccuracies and fixing the processes that created the inaccuracies in advance of the 2024 primary and general elections. During the September to November 2023 timeframe, a team of trained citizen volunteers canvassed a scientifically randomized list of registered voters across all 24 jurisdictions who voted in the 2020 general election. As a result, approximately 79,000 current apparent registration violations and approximately 27,000 voting violations were identified. Registration violations include such things as duplicate registrations, registrations with non-standard addresses, or registrants who have moved or are deceased. Voting violations include registrants younger than 16, dates of birth changed, and registration dates after the election. The purpose of this effort is to identify the problems and then, working with the boards of elections, improve the accuracy and security of the voting system in Maryland. That the voter rolls in Maryland have accuracy problems is not in dispute. Last September, I provided the names of many deceased persons who were not removed from the registration list for Montgomery County. Also, the State Office of Legislative Audits has identified voter roll maintenance as a problem area in the last 2 audits of the state boards of elections. And I am sure you are aware of the problems with ERIC, the Electronic Registration Information Center, that have resulted in several members of ERIC relinquishing their membership. I am providing these comments today to alert you to the effort that this team of Maryland citizens has expended to improve the accuracy of the voter rolls, and to ask that, if you have the opportunity, you recommend to the State Board of Elections that they join the team effort proposed by the team of citizens. Based on your response to previous efforts to maintain accurate voter rolls in Montgomery County, I have no doubt that you and your staff will continue to support these efforts. And that is the extent of my comments.
Thank you, Mr. Fletcher. I just want to state for the record that I am quite sure that you and I don't agree about the utility of ERIC. When you say that you are sure that we are aware of the problems with ERIC that resulted in several members of ERIC relinquishing their membership, I would say that is not true for me, because I personally believe that every state should join ERIC, and I have seen firsthand how it has been useful for exactly the problem that you are identifying, which is to keep the voter rolls as up to date as possible. I have seen when I had 2 children living in 2 different jurisdictions, that the one that was in an ERIC state had their voter registration updated quickly, and the one that was not in an ERIC state did not have their voter registration updated quickly. But I realize that that's not really the main focus of your comment today. My only question for you, and I don't know if others have questions, my only question for you is, how was this group of citizens who participated in your project chosen, and who did the selection?
Well, I am not sure. I think it was essentially on a volunteer basis.
But they volunteered to whom?
Say again, please.
To whom did they volunteer? In other words, is there a group that sponsored their efforts, or was or did you said that the report is being provided to the state board? Did the state board appoint them, or are they kind of appointed by somebody else and they're providing the results of their work to the state board?
Well, they weren't appointed by anybody. They're citizen volunteers, and they were definitely not appointed by the State Board of Elections. So,
Right. But how were they selected?
well, the I guess the best way to explain it is that people step up who are interested in making sure that the voter rolls are accurate, and if they have experience in data analysis or if they're statisticians, or if they have legal expertise, they volunteer their services.
Okay, but is somebody the organizer of this effort?
Within the state of Maryland, there are people who set it up and organize it, but they're essentially citizen volunteers. They don't have any official status. You know, they're
Okay,
not like,
well,
they're not elected officials or anything like that.
no, I wasn't suggesting that they were elected officials, and they certainly don't have to be elected officials to have useful information to give us. I promised my colleagues as a New Year's resolution that I was going to try and make our meetings not last as long. So I'm going to not continue to ask lots of questions here, but I will say that anytime that I look at a report from any group of people, I'm going to want to know kind of how they were selected, and who was kind of the organizer and their methodology, in addition to the results of what they found, because that would help me to get a sense as to the process that they went through. That's not something I would need today, but that would certainly be something that I would be interested in if I'm going to, review such a
I'll
report.
get that information for you, and perhaps in a subsequent meeting we can discuss it further, or I can provide you something in writing that gives you the background.
Yeah, if you can provide that in writing, that would be the ideal. But thank you for that. Does anybody else have any questions for Mr. Fletcher? Okay, well, thank you very much for joining us today.
Thank
We
you.
will, I'm sure we will see you soon. So,
Bye.
okay. Do we have any other public comment?
Mr. Fletcher was the only one.
Okay, is there anybody who is an attendee who seeks to public comment? If you do, I need you to raise your hand. Otherwise, we are going to move on to the director's report. Okay, I do not see anyone's hand raised, so Boris, please go ahead.
Thank you. I'll just go very briefly through the report that was shared with the board last Thursday. It was placed on our website last Thursday, so it's available for anyone who wants to read it properly. The first section, we are just talking about materials and the distribution dates. We shared them monthly statistics on the first, and as I said, director's report and the materials for today's board meeting were shared with the board and placed on the website last Thursday. When it comes to the action items from the last board meeting, the only action item that we had is the on-site visit to Sandy Spring by the board president, legal counsel, and our operations manager, Ms. Mindy Williams, and myself, which took place, and we also visited Wheaton early voting site in Silver Spring Civic Center. Some findings from those visits will be reflected today in the presentation on non-electioneering zones that staff will present to the board at the later point of the agenda. When it comes to voter registration statistics, our active voters are a bit over 679,000, inactive bit under 68,000, for the total of 747,006 voters as of end of January. When it comes to the State Board of Elections, I just wanted to bring up to the board something that was discussed, I believe, at this board, and the board president was asking for it, is to adjust online portal for voters who are requesting so-called web delivery or printed home ballots, to indicate all the steps that they would need to undertake in order to print, complete, and mail that ballot back to us, and what happens to that ballot once we get it. In my report, I just listed those questions that do appear on the screen now. If you are a voter who wants to request that kind of ballot, you will have to actively affirm that you are aware of all of these requirements that in order to obtain this kind of ballot. When it comes to personnel, as David already mentioned, we have Ms. Jennifer Daly joined us as a joint voter services. She will be working on a candidate filing going forward. And Jennifer, yes, she's been with us for quite some time. She worked on nursing homes program, McCanvas, and anything that's related to mail-in ballots. Ms. Julia Douglas has been with us, I believe, since 2016 at the training and IT section. She was a lead trainer for many, many years. And I believe that board members and general public have seen her on quite a few occasions visiting polling places and early voting sites whenever there was a need to explain something further. Program manager voter services position closed last week. We are planning for the interviews, hoping to hire for that position in the coming days. The ad that we have on multiple platforms for deputy director position is still active, and it will remain active until the position is filled. When it comes to the temporary positions, we have 50 team members, temporary team members on site. Our onboarding of temporary staff is driven by the tasks and the deadlines. We onboarded everyone who is delivering trainings, for example. We are staffing completely recruitment and mail-in ballot section as well, voter registration. So when we go through the activities of the sections and the numbers that we are of records or requests that we are processing, that gives an indication why we need this number of temporary colleagues. The budget document indicates that was shared with the board, is also available on the website, indicates the expenditures as of end of January, and it's as I said, it's available on our website. When it comes to the voter communication efforts, last board meeting we elaborated more in a more comprehensive way all the activities that we will undertake going forward, new activities, new outreach efforts, new messaging or communication that we want to do for the 2022. And today I'm just announcing another one, an email that will go out to anyone who signed up to receive this web deliver or printed home ballot. Our effort would be to show them exactly the same requirements that anyone who signs up today on the state website will see. So we want to bring everyone on the same page, give all these voters who want to consider whether they want to still receive a ballot, web delivery ballot, or they want to change it. Maybe jumping a bit here, I can tell the board that as of today, we have 16,300 web delivery printed home ballots already requested for the primary. And out of those 16,300, 15,000 of them are on the permanent list. So everyone understands that these are number. Of course, all the voters have right to request whichever ballot they want, but these are the ballots that will cause some difficulties for the voters to print out and return, as well as for us to canvass, because we will need to duplicate them.
And Boris, I would like to commend you for the email that you are sending to all of those voters to make sure that they know what they've asked for. And you know, if they should change their mind after they find out what they've gotten themselves into with this ballot and do it by another method, that's okay. If they decide to proceed, that's also okay, and we will obviously deal with their ballots. But I suspect that there may be many on that list who are not familiar with all of that's required for that. So thank you for doing that.
Thank you, Dave.
Alex.
Okay.
I'm sorry, Alex, go ahead.
Question, Boris, would that email go to everyone who's already on the permanent list as well?
So that email will go to, when I finalize the email, I'm going to go into a system and pull everyone who has signed up for this kind of ballot as of that moment. So we are talking about 16,300. And that number will include all those who are on the permanent list to receive ballots like this.
Okay, great. Thank you.
So it's the permanent list plus the people who requested it outside of the permanent list.
That's correct. And because if you are on the permanent list, you can change to receive your ballot via USPS and still be on the permanent list. So I will leave that to the voter once they receive all the information to make their mind what works best for them. But again, as I said, I think it's fair to level the field and give all the information to everyone ahead of time so they know what they are, what is ahead of them. When it comes to voter services, voter registration, we are processing daily all the records that are coming in. As before every election season, the number of people who are updating their voter registration information goes up normally. So we will see how those numbers will go up even higher as we get closer to the voter registration deadline, which is April 23rd, if I remember properly. So when it comes to mail-in voting, these are the numbers that in the director's report are from last Wednesday, I believe, Wednesday evening, when I was drafting the report. I can tell the board that as of this in report, I said that we had 98,000 applications for mail-in ballots. Today at noon, we had 105,500. So I believe if we would process all the backlog today, that we should be around 120,000, with the understanding that we always have a number of duplicate applications from people who are already on one list, but they are changing mind with one thing or another. So mail-in voting remains very strong, and the numbers are going up as we are getting closer to the election.
And we're not done yet.
Two things. We are not done yet. Number one, we still receive daily new applications, and we will continue to receive them until almost election day. The number that we receive daily has gone down, which is normal after the mailing of applications to register Republicans and Democrats. What will push the numbers to go up again is that sometime in March, State Board will mail the same applications to unaffiliated voters who were not included in the first mailing that went out on January 17th. And I believe it will go out to anyone who has who changed their address in meanwhile, so initial application bounced back. So these numbers will go up. I personally, I don't have a crystal ball, but I would assume that we could get somewhere up to 140, 150,000 mail-in ballot applications for the primary this year alone.
Thank you. Daniel, did you have your hand up before?
Yes, I was going to ask around the mail-in ballots, but also because Boris was very helpful to one of our residents in Montgomery County whose, I think, daughter relocated, similar to the problem you had. And Boris, for the benefit of my colleagues and the public, can you just, if anyone has an issue like that, how can it be resolved? Because I had to reach out to you, and thank you for being very responsive.
No, not a problem at all. If I remember properly, then you can correct me here. We had a situation where we have one of our voters who was leaving the state for studying and wanted to stay on the list to receive mail-in ballot. The only thing we needed for that person is to go online and submit a new request, which would be an update providing a mailing address out of the state. Basically, residential address stays the same because they are still our registered voters. That defines their ballot style. But for the college purposes, work, or any other vacation purposes, we accept mailing addresses out of the state, and ballots will be sent there.
That's
Thank
perfect.
you, Boris.
Perfect. Thank you, Boris. Alex, did you have your hand up?
Yes, Mr. President, I did. The 32,000 new applications, Boris, is that distributed across both new one-time requests and new requests to be on the permanent list?
That is correct. I can share with the board that out of first 20,000 applications that we processed, half of them were requests for the permanent, half of them were for the one-time off. So we entered the election season with some 84,500 permanent requests. As of today, we are at 95,700 permanent requests going forward.
Could you repeat that number, please?
95,700 voters requested to be permanently. Yeah.
Okay.
And that, I believe by the end of the week, I would, or next week, we'll hit 100,000 easily. Because literally somehow it's like 50-50 split of all the requests. 50% go for the permanent list.
Okay, Margie.
Thank you, Mr. President. Boris, I was wondering how these numbers compare to the last presidential election and if it would even be fair to compare the two.
Oh, so it cannot be compared for a simple reason. For the last presidential 2020, every voter got a ballot for the primary, and every voter got an application for the general. And we were still under COVID restrictions, I would say. So I believe that year we had 347,000 mail-in ballots. But if my memory serves me well, on election day, we had 40 voting centers. We didn't have polling places and anything. So while 2020 was an emergency, I believe that 2022 and 2024 is setting something that, in my view, would be a practice going forward. So we spoke earlier that I'm not a big fan of 2020 numbers because they're outliers. That you cannot replicate that situation, or God help us not to replicate that situation. But having a data from 2022 and 2024, we see the clear trend that if it holds like this, I believe that after this round of elections, we will have anywhere around maybe 20% of our voters on the permanent mail-in ballot list, with additional maybe 10 to 15% adding up on each election cycle. So that number will just go up.
Thank you.
Any other questions so far, Boris? I don't know if we allowed you to get to the end of your report or if we kind of jumped in.
Not yet, but I'll get there.
Okay, so why don't you just go ahead and proceed?
Okay. So candidate filing process concluded on February 9th, 9 p.m. I just listed that we had 14 candidates that filed for the Board of Education with our office, and the distribution of those candidates per districts or at large is listed in the report. When it comes to the training, IT and training section, IT is working on allocation of equipment for the early voting election day and preparation of the said equipment for the before logic and accuracy. We did launch election worker portal on February 7th. So election workers can renew if they are returning or submit a new applications for this current election cycle. And our work on this portal is not done. This is the first phase. So IT manager continues to work with tabs on finalizing the portal, including the future vote part of it that we expect to roll out quite soon. Our training classes began on February 20th. We are doing currently classes at our building and the Nancy Daisy Community Recreation Center. We are utilizing one room in our building that we will have to vacate soon because that room is designed for the Dropbox operations. But in the meanwhile, we are running trainings wherever we can to accommodate people to make it easier for them to attend. When it comes to the operations sections, the same work as we were reported last time. We are preparing cards and supplies and everything that will go out to 233 polling places and 14 early voting sites. When it comes to the recruitment and election support section, as I reported earlier to the board, on the kickoff, we sent over 23,000 emails to anyone that we had in our database who either served or expressed interest at some point that they would like to serve as election judges or election workers. This is not, there are quite few duplicate emails on this list, but the number of total individuals that we have reached is still huge. By last Wednesday, we had almost 2,000 people who either submitted or they renewed their application. 1,200 completed the online quiz, and the training has started with 95 first volunteers completed in-person training by February 21st. And we had 655 individuals who signed up for the training classes that we have scheduled until March 29. So our volunteers are picking classes and times and locations that suits best their busy schedules. When it comes to the party affiliation of those who renew the application, Democrats almost 1,300, Republicans bit over 200, with the unaffiliated under 400. So in addition to getting more applicants, getting any applicant to take the online quiz faster or to sign up, the task for us remains to try to onboard as many volunteers who are of any other party affiliation than Democrats, in addition to Democrats, because we have, as these numbers indicate, we have a bit of this balance that we would like to correct going forward. So invitation for anyone who is affiliated with the Republican Party, especially just to sign up on our portal and become election worker in the next election.
And just to clarify that, and then I see that Kina has her hand up as well, but the reason why you are saying especially Republicans and unaffiliated is that we need bipartisan teams for much of what we do. If I did the numbers correctly that you gave me, we have an even larger percentage of our election judges who are Democrats than we do of our registered voters. So that Republicans and unaffiliated voters are underrepresented, not only compared to Democrats, but compared to their numbers among all registered voters. So we are very much in need of election judges who are unaffiliated or Republicans, so that we can balance the Democrats that we have. And I know that we've been making efforts in that area. And we obviously need to continue. Kina and then Ami.
Thank you, Mr. President. Thank you, Boris, for what you've shared so far. For public record, can you please share the dates and times of the next three election voter training dates, please?
I'm not sure that I follow. When are the next 3 trainings?
Yes, please.
So that schedule is available to anyone who applies and completes the online quiz. The training is not open for anyone to walk in. Anyone who attends in-person training, requirement is to apply and pass the online quiz first. So if you apply on our website, you'll be asked to take online quiz. Once you pass the online quiz, you'll be contacted by our recruiter and open a new link for you with the schedule of the trainings to pick the date that best works for you. So there is no such thing as a public schedule, because there's a requirement to attend in-person training. We don't want to do any in-person training for people who promise that they will take online quiz. It has to be in a sequence that is manageable.
Thank you very much.
Okay, Ami and then Diane.
Yes, no, my comment was that just we have done a better job of communicating to the Republican groups that might be the source of volunteers in the last few months. I know a number of us on the board here are in fact working on encouraging more of that. And hopefully we can encourage more volunteers to step up. I just want you to know, Mr. Chairman, that those of us on the Republican side of the board are doing our best to try and solve that particular problem.
Well, and it's very much appreciated. I would just say to your colleagues in the Republican Party that the Democratic Party is outshining them in this area at the moment, and perhaps they want to get some bragging rights. So so consider that to be a challenge that we're not expecting them to exceed the number of Democrats in Montgomery County, given the numbers. But perhaps they can exceed their percentage of their registered voters. That would be a worthwhile goal.
May I just add that for the staff point of view, we are very grateful for any event that board members did invite us or open the door for us to reach out to the Republican base and Republican members in the past. And this is the part where I believe that board and staff are very much in sync, and we utilize those opportunities to invite anyone to join us and serve as election work. So
and if there's anything else that you all think that we can do to do outreach in this area, it's in all of our interests to have a mixture of party affiliations for our judges. That's how our elections have been run as long as I've been alive, and probably longer. So certainly, if there's anything else that can be done, we're certainly ready to help. Diane.
Yeah, thank you. Boris, I get a number of requests on a routine basis for how Republicans can apply to be election judges. And just to verify, the easiest is to go on the Board of Elections website and there's a link there.
Yeah, so
Want to make sure.
anyone who goes to our website, at the very top, there's a banner and it says election workers. If you open that banner, there's everything is there. You just follow the tabs, follow the instructions, everything is there.
Okay,
So-
great.
so-
Then two,
And they can always call us. If anyone has problems accessing anything, please, there's a numbers are there, just call us.
So Boris,
Okay.
I'm looking at that link right now, and there are 7 different places you can go with election workers. So, and to me, it would not be immediately obvious from the list at the top of the page as to where one goes. I'm not sure if it's EJ Connection is where you start, or is it well, there is one that's called Getting Started. So I suppose that's the one that where you start.
Yeah, so now we get to the, we have a number of returning election judges who are part of EJ Connection from the previous time, so they just go there straight, right?
I got it.
And anyone else, it's a connection is there, getting started. It's pretty familiar terminology for everyone to kick off the process. And the bottom line is just call us. Please, we will assist as much as we can for anyone to get into the system and submit application, take the quiz.
Thank you. I'm sorry, Diane, go ahead.
yeah, great. Two other things. It's been a long time since I've taken the online test, but they're really good in keeping in touch because I still get emails and this was at least 8 years ago. So to that point, we need more Republicans, and I don't remember how the questionnaire goes, but is there any way to flag the Republicans to make sure that their names are queued up when they get in this, or is that not a problem? That we have so many people applying that people are getting lost, but I know you're looking for Republicans. Do they identify when they take the test, whether with whom they're affiliated?
So in order to be an election worker, you have to be a registered voter in state of Maryland. So once you go through the system, we have access to your voter registration
Okay.
records where you have your party affiliation as well.
Okay, thanks. And
So-
go ahead.
No, I'm just saying if sometimes people identify with the party that's not listed on the voter records, they will have to update it one way or another because we
Okay.
have to go with what's on our record.
Okay, thanks. And then lastly, I've had a number of questions about folks interested in being an election worker at the canvas. They were under the impression that you had to be an election judge first, and that's where the pool of candidates come from. And I said, no, that's not the case. We're always looking for canvassers. Is that in that same drop-down list?
So the Canvas is slightly different because Canvas doesn't require the same training that is required for the polling election day and early voting. So I would still advise everyone to sign up and submit. I believe we have an email out where they express interest to be a part of the Canvas. We tried last year to increase the pool of potential canvassers, and I like the fact that you are bringing it up because bigger the pool for us, it's better. Especially going forward, we should have the big room to canvass all the time with 50 teams. So they will still need to be in the system as election workers in order for us to be able to process the payroll for them on the end.
Okay, great. And then
There is no separate system. One payroll goes for whatever position you serve because we submit from that system. We pull the data from that system, pass it to county finance department to pay out the stipends. Whether you serve early voting, election day, canvas, Dropbox attendance, whatever, it's still the same process.
all right, thanks. And I misspoke. Just one last thing. Is there a deadline at which one can apply to be an election judge?
So there is no deadline. You can apply throughout the whole year. There are two things at least to keep in mind. Number one is that earlier you apply, better chances you have to be assigned at your home precinct. Meaning, if we are fortunate enough to staff the precinct, that polling place that might be your next door, right? We can only offer you later on some other polling places where you will need to drive maybe to other part of the county. So sooner you apply, better chances you have to get the position that you want, whether it's a chief, a regular operation judge, or closer, and better chances to get assigned to the polling place that you want. But regardless of that, we accept applications and interest throughout the whole year.
Okay.
And again, if we are fortunate to have identified sufficient number of election workers, train them and assign them for the primary, we will still receive applications, but there will be no room for the primary election. They will go.
I would be shocked if that happens. I don't think it's
I'm just
happened.
trying to be.
I don't think it's happened in my
heads up
12
to all
in
the
my
options.
12 years, but that would be a wonderful result
Absolutely.
if we were to have more judges than we have space for. I would just add to what Boris said, because I know that I'm a procrastinator, and I know that we have a few procrastinators out there, and we know that many Montgomery County voters are procrastinators. That to me, what I keep hearing as the main motivation for people not to wait to apply to be an election judge is the one that Boris mentioned about being able to be either in your own home precinct or close to home, rather than where we need you, because we need people all over the county. Not everyone wants to go all over the county. Many people want to be close to home. And the best opportunity to have that opportunity is by applying now and not later.
Yeah. And Boris, thank you for your time on this. It's been very helpful.
Anytime. If you just allow me, I very briefly go through the last section, which is list of the meetings that I hope I didn't miss any. I did attend the MACO legislative reception in Annapolis on behalf of NAO. Myself, World by Mayor Specialist Michelle Gonda, and our acting deputy director, Ms. Janet Ross, we attended the Rockville Post Municipal Elections Forum. It's a standard practice in Rockville that they have a public hearing to learn the perception, how elections were conducted, areas for improvement, and such. The same meeting was held with the state election administrator, because the state did play a role in the local elections in Rockville this time for mailing their ballots. And again, the acting deputy director and myself, we attended that meeting too. There were two meetings with the county executive and the Office of Management and Budget to discuss future budget needs, as announced at the last board meeting. The first one, it was myself and our budget specialist, Mr. William. And then the few days later, it was the board that met with the county executive as well. So that will be the election director report for today.
Okay, thank you, Boris. I know you've gotten a lot of questions as you've gone along, but does anyone have any other questions for Boris about the director's report? Okay, let's move to the board attorney's report. Kevin.
So I've been working with Boris and Mindy to finalize the MOUs for MCPS, City of Rockville, Montgomery County, and Montgomery College. Boris and I chatted yesterday, and I think we've got them in final form, and we'll go ahead and get those out and signed for the primary and general election. And I think Boris is following up with Sandy Spring, but we've they wanted a plan for providing adequate ingress and egress, which is one of the things we took a tour for earlier in the month. And I think that's been finalized as well. So we should have all the agreements we need in place for the primary in the next, certainly signed copies in the next 2 weeks.
That sounds great. Thank you, Kevin. Anything else from you?
That's it.
Any questions for Kevin?
Mr. President, just quickly, Kevin, did I hear you mention Montgomery College or?
Yes, Montgomery College.
Okay, I just wanted to make sure.
They wanted a short MOU to have in place, and we've gotten that finalized as well. So I'll get it over to their general counsel for them to go ahead and put their eyes on it, but it shouldn't take long to turn it around.
All right, thank you, Kevin.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions for Kevin? Alex?
Oh, Mr. President, I apologize. I had a question for Boris about the budget, if that was sort of encompassed within his report. Or have we not gotten to that yet?
Heck if I know. Boris, was your budget part of your report?
I always just put it as a segment of the report because we attached a separate document, but I'm happy to answer any question if I can, Alex.
Sure. I'll be brief. I noticed that we have for temporary office a negative number. Not sure exactly what that means, but if you could clarify. And then there were a couple of line items such as 60532, other non-professional services. Looks like we've exceeded what our fiscal 24 budget is. There's another one or two instances where I saw we had exceeded that. So do you anticipate we're going to need to go and ask for a supplemental? I mean, I know that the fiscal 25, fiscal year will be starting July 1, but we still have a few months to go.
So very, very briefly, we just there's ongoing conversation with the OMB about the status of our budget and the projection of our budget needs in order to enable for I would say early trigger if needed for the supplemental. I don't think that if we are on a $12 billion budget, if we are talking about negative, that will be a few $1,000s that would actually be a big problem. What the issue here is on the budget line is 60168. We believe this was a wrong entry. Basically, the budget codes that were provided for one charge were submitted to against this budget line. Again, it was pulled on this was the status of that day, and Chuck is literally inquiring to move to find the charge that was that went against the budget line. So we have an eye on this one, and we hope to have it sorted out before the next board meeting.
Okay. All right. So I guess you'll know in the coming weeks, when we might need to ask for a supplemental and what it would be, I guess.
Yes. So at this point, I think that as a last second quarter analysis, our overall expenditures that might be subject of supplemental were around $70,000. And $70,000 line can be, but these are still projections because we still have all this high intensity spending period around the elections. So to pinpoint and say we will be 70,000 down in this budget line this early, it's really something that we cannot say. The question is that we are coming across is that on some budget lines, when projections were made, the projections were made based on the costs that were at that time. However, the costs today are not necessarily the same that we projected when we were putting numbers together. The second issue is some of the budget lines might be subject to different bidding processes. And bidding process is a bidding process. You go for the company or provider that is less expensive but can deliver, but that necessarily doesn't mean that you projected what someone business model would deliver them a profit, right? So no one will sign up to do work for us to lose money. So these are the things that we'll need to balance going forward. But we do quarterly analysis. We talk to OMB all the time, and if my memory serves me well, I think we were around. Projection was $70,000 on the second quarter analysis. And for the full disclosure, I think the big chunk of this potential overspending would be related to a number of communication efforts that we are designing for the upcoming elections. So this will not be a recurring effort. For example, those maps that we want to print for the polling places or new signs or stuff like that, these are one-time bigger costs, And going forward, for every election, we will just replenish those that got damaged. So I would rather see them as an investment than expenditure.
All right, great, thank you.
Thank you.
Any other questions for Boris or Kevin? Okay, Boris, I believe that the presentation on the no electioneering zones for the early voting centers is next for you and Mindy.
Jerry, can you promote Mindy, please? So Mindy will bring up the presentation and the start of all.
Yeah, one of you have to turn off your sound.
Yeah, sorry for that. So we will have for the start the two presentations. One of the is the presentation of non-electioneering zones for the early voting centers that was previously initially shared with the board. This presentation will encompass some conclusions and finding of the site visit, not field trip, but site visit to early voting centers at the Sandy Spring, Wheaton, and Silver Spring. And the second one would be non-electioneering zones for the polling places. But when we say polling places, we are just referring to those polling places that are being changed compared to the 2022. So, Mindy, please.
All right. Make sure the right one. Right, so in lieu of going through the entire presentation, I kind of just want to touch on what was updated in this presentation versus the last, because all I did was simply update the changes based upon our conversations. Should be. Bear with me. There we go.
Okay. Yes, now we can see your screen.
All right, is that better?
Yes, thank you.
All right, so this is the full presentation of all 14 early voting sites. I just kind of want to touch on the ones that have been changed. If there's any other questions or any other things that we need to take a look at, please stop me as I'm going through. So just the election laws pertaining to no electioneering zones, and then we trigger into our locations. Mid-County remains the same.
Mindy, I'm sorry.
David, do you have a comment?
Yeah, well, you went really quickly through the election laws, and I just want to remind everybody.
David, I think you're muted.
Not according to what I'm looking at.
Oh, nope, I can hear you now. Go ahead.
Okay. I was just going to say that you went really speedily through the election law, and I just wanted to remind everybody that Montgomery County has its own election law related to no electioneering, where it's up to the board to put the no electioneering boundary between 25 and 100 feet from the entrance to the building, whereas the rest of the state, it's 100 feet. And that's obviously something for everyone to keep in mind. Okay, thank you.
Okay, so back to Mid-County Community Recreation Center. These remain the same from the first presentation, and nothing has changed. EOB, we did update, so we've made 3 updates to this presentation. The previous ones for EOB were much farther out, so this is an updated photo. Germantown remains the same. Brazener remains the same. We have the alternate handicap accessible entrance on the side. Silver Spring Civic Building is one of the locations we've changed. So to David's point regarding the 125 to 100 feet, Silver Spring is more than 25. We've also added the additional, hard to see in this picture, but the additional no electioneering signs on the side that lead towards the grass area near the stairs was something we talked about during our meeting. Side view that gives a better view of those 4 no electioneering zones closest to the building. There you go. And then just an aerial. Borough Park remains, go ahead.
Before you move on, I just want to make clear, it's an update to the presentation, but it is the same boundary that was used 2 years ago.
Correct. The previous presentation's boundary did not match what was necessarily used in the 22 cycle. So we went ahead and updated that. Borough Park remains the same. Damascus Recreation Center remains the same. Lawton remains the same. Wheaton. So I tried to kind of tell the story in the photos. David, Kevin, you guys may have to kind of help chime in. This is the front view of the main entrance to Wheaton Community Center. And then as the photos go through, it kind of walks it out towards the right as we lead towards the elevator to the stairs. So main view. And then leading to the stairs, we've extended the no electioneering zone across from the, that's not a column, the pole there to the top of the stairs. The opposite Georgia Avenue entrance remains the same. And then we reevaluated the no electioneering zones in the garage. We'll go from left to right. If I'm facing the elevator, these photos are from left to right. So facing the elevator to the left. Different view. To the right of the elevator. And this is the opposite side of the stairs. I'm not really sure how to explain this one other than it's leading towards the elevator.
Mindy, could you go back to the first Wheaton slide, and perhaps I can add a
The
little
front,
addition.
the front of the building?
Yes, I'm going to add a little bit to what you said here. So that's the main entrance where most people entered the building, and the silver door on the right-hand side of that photo, that is the elevator. It's not an elevator into the building, it's an elevator from the garage to that level. And what we endeavored to do was to make sure that there was a clear path for someone who parks in handicap parking in the garage to get to the elevator in the garage, come up the elevator, come out of the elevator, and go into the front door without having their path blocked. So what this this boundary is very similar to what we've had in the past, if not the same. I don't remember exactly what was in the past, but we very intentionally, we found places in the garage where there could be electioneering, but where the electioneers would not be blocking the path to the elevator. So if you can go to the next slide shows you where the stairs are. So again, if someone comes up the stairs, same thing, they can get to the front door, their path is not blocked. Now, if you could go to the garage, you can see that rectangle is where the electioneers are allowed to be, where it says caution, because in front of them is where there's a curb cut, just off of the photo there, and there's a curb cut on the other side of the column there. And the idea is to allow people to use the curb cuts without having electioneers blocking their way, but to allow the electioneers to talk to them as they're coming towards the elevator. And then something similar was done at the bottom of the stairs, which is where she's basically showing you the other side. First of all, yes, on the other side, again, people can get there without the electioneers, but the electioneers want to talk to the people coming out of the. I don't recommend it to anyone who's an electioneer. It's much better to be in the sunlight than to be in the garage. But if you should decide that you need to be in the garage, we wanted to make sure that we balance the need of the voters to have access to the entrance and the elevator versus your right to electioneer. Thank you.
Thank you. Potomac Community Recreation Center remains the same. Sandy Spring Volunteer Fire Department would remain the same. Same thing with White Oak. Nancy Dasick, and finally the Bauer Drive Community Center. So that would be the remainder for the no electioneering, the updated no electioneering zones for the early voting sites.
Could you and Boris, first of all, I want to say thank you to you and Boris and Kevin for our Saturday site visit, which I thought was extraordinarily helpful, obviously outside of the normal workday, but I still think it was very helpful for us to check everything out for ourselves and talk to each other. And I think that was very valuable. Where Sandy Spring is concerned, we were talking about, and I think we're making some changes in order to make sure that the fire trucks can go where they need to go without voters blocking them. And I think we're directing people when they park to park in the parking lot that's a little further away from the entrance unless they are eligible for handicap parking. But if you could explain that so that people can understand the changes, because we didn't change the no electioneering boundary, but we did kind of change some of the setup at Sandy Spring, I think.
So I don't have the parking plan readily available to pull, but the thought process behind what we are doing is redirecting voters to the second entrance to the firehouse. Because the first entrance, if you enter through the first entrance, a lot of voters, what has been historically happening is they loop around the rear of the building, which is basically fire department access only. It can bring you up into the front of the bays where the fire trucks and ambulances enter and exit. We've had voters that have parked and blocked egress for the fire apparatus. So the goal this time is to block those entrances off for fire department personnel only. We'll assign staff and or crossing guards to assist with voter direction, traffic direction to the farthest parking spot, which was the second entrance. It's maybe an additional 30 yards, 40 yards to the entrance, in hopes of being a good partner with our friends at Sandy Spring.
May I just, if I may just add a few comments. As Mindy says, entrance is literally one after another. The change of the plan comes based on the recognized problems that manifest themselves in 2022. And it's our effort and the effort of the fire department in Sandy Spring to provide for uninterrupted operations of fire department and their vehicles and their crews as the need be in the community. This change, it will in no way interfere with non-electioneering zone for the early voting site. It will in no way interfere with ADA parking for all voters who want to vote in person during early voting. The same parking will be utilized as in previous years, and it will be right outside of the entrance to the building. All other voters will be required just to follow the instructions, and we will have a lot of signage there to the main parking lot on the, I don't know how to say, facility campus or something for the fire station. By following the signs that will be placed in cooperation between the Board of Election and Fire Department in Sandy Spring, we will be able to achieve everything. So everyone will have access to parking, everyone will have access to early voting, and operations of the fire department will not be interrupted in any way.
And then, as I recall, in addition to signage on the last day, which is typically our busiest day, we're going to try and have people there to help make sure that the voters can find the appropriate parking locations for their needs. And I'll just reiterate that I appreciate very much the work that Boris and Mindy have done with the fire department. We obviously not only want to be good partners, we need to be good partners because we need that polling location. And you know, we don't, you know, we want it to be a positive experience for them and for us. And if our voters are in the way of their fire trucks, they're going to not be able to have our voters there for very long. So we obviously need to do that. The other thing is that they are desperately in need, and we have identified this in past elections, of a sign on 108 with a left turn arrow that tells you where the volunteer fire department is. And I know that in this group, we have a variety of different connections to county government. And I don't know if it's the county or the state that we need to convince of this, but it would be a great benefit not only to the fire department, but to us to have a sign there so that if you're driving down 108 and you're looking for your polling place, that you know where it is you're supposed to turn. There are two different Sandy Spring Volunteer Fire Department stations. Um, the sample ballot is going to identify the number of the station, which is going to distinguish it for those who actually go into that level of detail. But there's still, you know, we should be able to, we should do whatever we can to assist in making sure that the voters can find it and also that others can find it, which strikes me as being in their interest and ours. So, Daniel.
Thank you, Mr. President. In the interest of the public, and I know the inference of, obviously, if it was a county road, I would have assured you that it would have been taken care of, but 108 is a state road. So just to be on the record, and that the public know that is, again, 108 is a state road.
Now, does that mean that a sign on 108 requires state approval?
That is correct.
Okay, and do you happen to know what is the process for making that happen? Like, who do we need to talk to encourage that to happen?
Mr. President, you're trying to put me on the spot here. I believe we have very, very engaged citizens here in Montgomery County who know their delegates and
Okay.
state senators very well, especially in that district.
Okay. Well, I will certainly endeavor to speak with some of those delegates and state senators, and I know you can as well. And I really do think it is a no lose proposition. There's really no one who would suffer. I don't know what the cost of a sign is, but it can't possibly be too huge. Um, and we'll have to do what we can. But I do think it would be a great benefit to everyone, and thank you for that clarification.
You're welcome.
Any questions about the no electioneering boundaries or the other issues relating to the early voting sites that we've just discussed? Okay, the chair will entertain a motion to approve the staff recommended no electioneering boundaries for the early voting locations. Ami, you are muted, but I think I read your
Okay,
lips.
so moved, so moved.
Okay,
Second. I'll
okay,
second it.
okay, moved by Ami, seconded by Diane. Is there any further discussion? Okay, we're gonna do a quick roll call. Daniel?
I vote yes.
Okay, Ami?
I vote yes.
Okay, Kina?
I vote yes.
Diane?
Aye.
Okay, and I vote yes, so it is unanimous, 5-0. Thank you very much. Boris and Mindy, on to your second presentation.
Hey, David, I can't hear Mindy.
Nor can I.
It looked like she was talking.
Still muted.
There you go.
Should not be. Can you hear me
Okay.
now?
Yes.
Yes, yes,
No,
thank
I
you.
can't. Thank you, Diane. So I'm pretty sure that you didn't hear anything that I said.
I'm sure it was
so
brilliant.
these 5 locations were also included in the precinct no electioneering boundaries that have been posted on the website since the January meeting. But here they are by themselves. We'll go in order. Burnt Mills Elementary School. No electioneering boundaries would be, this is the voter entrance. This is location 0505. And then 0516, which is Stonegate Elementary, we're returning to after a few years. No electioneering boundaries here. 0604 is DeFeef Elementary. They were scheduled for renovations. They did partial renovations. We left and we are coming back. So there's not much that has changed in terms of this location. Everything remains the same as it was previously, but it is a return. So this is the previous no electioneering zone that was used in prior 2018, I think, because 22 we were at the somewhere else.
The DASIC Center, I think.
Yep. Yep, is consolidated with DASIC. South Lake Elementary. South Lake we're proposing 2 no electioneering zones. This is the main entrance to the facility, which is roughly 15 to 20 feet maybe to the other entrance. So this is the main entrance to the school. This is what we intend to use as the voter entrance. The polling room, the voting room is on the lower level. This entrance takes voters directly into the hallway with access to the stairs, as well as direct access to the elevator that opens immediately outside of the polling room. So this would be our preferred entrance for voters.
Are you going to have signs at the other entrance directing people to that entrance?
Yeah, I mean, you can see them both from, yeah, they're
Okay.
literally, if I'm staring at the front of the school, that you can see them both right there.
Okay.
But
great.
yeah, we can stick a sign there as well.
Okay, thank you.
And finally, Parkland Middle School, which we are returning to from Brookhaven Elementary. And the no electioneering zones for this particular one do not change from when we were there previously, because they've only done a refresh, they've done an addition, so the main entrance remains the same as it was prior to us consolidating before moving back. So this would be the same as it was in 2018, I think was the last time we were there. And then the end. Questions?
Just to clarify, Mindy, we posted on our website all of the no electioneering zones for all of the county polling places.
Correct.
To my knowledge, we did. I don't believe I've seen any commentary about any of them. Have we received any public comment about any of the no electioneering boundaries?
So, sorry. Okay. We are trying to balance we have at the, I believe, last board meeting, we invited public to just reach out to established system to provide comments on non-electioneering zones, and we have not received anything.
Okay, that's what I wanted to know. So the reason why we're only hearing about these is because there have been changes of some kind. Either we're returning to a polling place that we haven't used in a while, even though the electioneering zone may not have changed, or a change in the electioneering zone. And as far as the rest of the 200 and some precincts, we put it out for comment and we didn't receive any comments, and that's absolutely fine. I just wanted to make sure that was all on the record. Any other questions or comments for Boris and Mindy on these polling place no electioneering zones?
Sorry. Nothing from outside anymore.
Okay. then I will entertain a motion to approve the staff recommended no electioneering zones for the election day polling places.
I move we approve the staff recommendations.
I'll
Okay.
second.
Okay, moved by Diane and seconded by Ami, which is appropriate since the other motion was moved by Ami and seconded by Diane. Any discussion? Okay, then we will go to a vote. Again, I'm going to do a quick roll call vote. Daniel,
I vote yes.
Ami,
Yes.
Kina,
I vote yes.
Diane,
I,
and I vote yes. So it is unanimous, and those are approved as well. I assume we're going to, well, let me not make any assumptions. I would ask that we find a way for the no electioneering zone maps to remain on our website in a place where our electioneers can find them, so that they know what the story is. So in other words, I would ask that it not be required that they have to know that we considered it at this particular board meeting in order to find them, and that we find some way to, I'm not saying they have to be the most visible thing on our website, but I do want to make it possible so that if someone says to me or any of my colleagues, what is the no electioneering zone at X polling place? We can say to them, it's available on our website and here's how you find it. So that would be my request. Anything else on that subject before we move on in the agenda? Okay, Boris, website.
Okay. Sorry. So I share with the board, and again, it's on our website, the statistics for our website usage in January. For those who might be interested, our numbers are going up, which was expected compared December to January. And I'll try for the next board meeting to try to put some graph to see how the numbers go up and down in certain categories to make it more visual. I asked board for the patience to give me a few months just to have sufficient data to make some sense of that graph. And I believe we'll be ready to present something next time. Numbers are, as I said, going up compared to the previous sessions. Number of web pages viewed by users, we are on 17,000. We have 8,000 distinct users. And the number of sessions that lasted longer than 10 seconds or had two or more hits is almost 5,000. The number of bookmark page went up a bit, so we are on 47%. So that will be one interesting data that I'll try to put for the board on a graph for the next time. Not surprisingly, as we are getting closer, and a lot of advertising, homepage is still the main landing page. It was kind of a play of numbers. That number is 7777, but that is not our choosing. It's just it happened. For this election worker job descriptions was up as we were getting closer to the launch of the portal and all the efforts to invite volunteers to serve. So job descriptions for election workers, election worker program overview as a total, school poll workers. So these are like top 3 pages that were visited on our website. And I hope at the end of the February, these pages will be top 3 again, because this is what we need to have the successful primary. Actually, first 4, because election judge is getting started again. It's 456. So as I said, numbers are going up compared to the December. In December, as I said, if the numbers are too low, I do check with our colleagues to see if that's across the agencies in the county, and that was the case. We are getting some numbers that there should be our numbers going forward. So we will keep an eye on them. And so far, I would say that as expected, The numbers of visits went up. The pages that are being visited reflect what we expected, where we want to see at this particular point, which is recruitment, recruitment, and recruitment.
That sounds great. Thank you, Boris. Glad
So-
to see.
What,
What-
you have to unmute? Or someone does.
Okay, any questions?
David, we cannot hear you, David.
Uh, can others hear me? All right, I think you just have to turn on the sound on one of your computers, Boris, or you got it. Okay. Any other questions for Boris about the website?
Mr. President, I was looking at the list of attendees. I just want to thank Boris and the team. I saw that
Yes.
some of the people who had reached out to me, wanted to be election judges, actually not only got through the process, and they also, a few of them are actually joining us at this meeting. So really thank you, Boris and the team, for making the process easy for them.
Thank you, Daniel. Thank you for recruiting. Anyone else wanted to talk about what Boris just described on the website? Okay, let's move on then to the legislation update, and we'll start with you, Boris.
So I'll be very, very brief. We try to put together the list of all the legislation that has is related to elections. But that's not necessarily the budget, let's put it this way, because money matters to put everything together. So there is an extensive list spread on 15 pages that we try to put together every House bill and every Senate bill that is being presented. It has some connection to the election, in whether it's voter registration, mail-in voting, voting systems, options for voting, or whatever. Many of these bills have a mimic from the House to the Senate. All those bills that are listed like this are presented on the sheet. There's a short synopsis of the bill or intent of the bill, and who is the sponsor, what is the status. I wish it would be too much for me to claim that I can, from the top of my head, speak about all of these bills, but I hope that as the links are provided in the document and it's available on our website, so anyone who is interested doesn't need to search through the General Assembly website per se. You can just see it on our website. All the bills that have election topic are listed there.
Okay, thank you, Boris. Diane, do you have a question for Boris about what he just said?
Not a question, just that I want to thank you, Boris. I thought that that was just one incredible and impressively helpful document that you sent. I can't imagine the work that went into that, and I truly, truly appreciate it.
Thank you.
I'll just add my appreciation. Boris is being very modest about his ability to keep track of multiple bills in the legislature that relate to elections. And I find that although he claims that he does not have legal training, that he seems to find the crux of the matter pretty well, and so I hope that he does not decide that he has this late in life desire to become a lawyer, because we need him as an election director. But he is very much on top of these bills, and I very much appreciate the opportunity to get his input when things arise.
Thank you.
Okay, so I have two motions that I would like to bring up relating to legislation. I want to just say before I get into them that it was my goal only to well, let me rephrase that. I realize that there's lots of election legislation about which we could debate and discuss that we would not all be on the same page on. That might reflect some of the discussions that are taking place outside of the state of Maryland. I have not endeavored to have discussions about those issues because that struck me as not being the best use of our board's time. I'm trying to use our expertise from our own experience as Board of Elections members to help inform the legislature about the bills that really aren't the partisan pieces of legislation, but that really are, kind of what I would consider to be bipartisan in nature. So, which is not to say that I'm more than happy to have those discussions with anybody, but I thought it would be a better use of our time as a board if we were to talk about those things that affect our jobs directly and that of our staff. And that is how I chose what I was making motions on today. But obviously, any board member can suggest a position on any piece of legislation. The first motion that I would like to make is that I'd like to move that the board support Governor Westmore's legislation to make it a crime to threaten election officials with an amendment that I will explain after it's on the table. Is there a second?
Aye.
Okay, so moved by me, seconded by Keena. Let me say, board members may recall that our board voted unanimously in November to recommend that the legislature pass legislation to make it a crime to threaten election officials. I believe we also voted on the old board similarly. I don't remember the exact vote, whether it was unanimous or not, but I believe that the last board also was in favor of legislation to make it a crime for to threaten an election official, which is the state of the law in many states. This particular bill, which is Senate Bill 480 and House Bill 585, and as I mentioned, is part of Governor Westmore's legislative agenda. It creates a new misdemeanor charge in the election law article for threats against election officials or their families, prosecutable by either state's attorney's offices or the office of the state prosecutor. And my concern, well, first of all, let me say I am happy but not surprised to see that Governor Moore made this a priority, our election administration issues. You may recall that he came and spoke to our biannual meeting of all the Maryland local board members in October of 2023. He clearly is interested in these issues. His legislation covers members and employees of the State Board of Elections and the local boards, and it covers election judges, which is the phrase that's used in the bill. My concern is that an election judge includes election officials at early voting locations and election day polling places, but does not include others who should be included, such as the bipartisan teams who collect mail-in ballots at drop boxes, who help us canvass the votes at the mail-in ballot vote canvass, who go to Maryland nursing homes to help residents there to vote, and our students who help volunteer under the Future Vote program or programs in other counties to include young people. I don't believe that we should say that it's criminal to physically threaten some election officials like the members and staff of this board or the election judges without including the people who handle that other process and without including the volunteers, the students. So my motion is to add election workers to the list of election officials who, if you physically threaten them, it's a criminal offense. To include folks in the categories that I just mentioned who work in bipartisan teams, and I think it's essential to those who assist us in that work that they are protected from threats. To my knowledge, we've been lucky enough in Montgomery County to avoid such threats, but others in Maryland have not been so lucky. And I thank Governor Moore and the General Assembly for doing what they can so that it doesn't become our problem. And I thank this board for having supported in concept this idea in the past. Now I'm asking that we support this particular legislation with this particular amendment. The floor is open for other discussion. Alex. And Diane.
First, well, a question, then I have some concerns I wanted to express. Are not the people who handle the drop boxes and who work on the canvas, are they not employees of the local board?
I defer to Boris on that.
No, they are not. They are election judges who serve. I apologize. They are election judges who take the oath and serve. There's only difference between canvassers and drop box attendants, that anyone who is touching ballots outside of the polling place or a canvas goes through the background checks. So drop box attendants and nursing home and facilities personnel, they are bipartisan teams of election judges on whom we run background checks before we sign them up for the program.
But they're not necessarily staff members.
Well,
No,
I guess not staff, but if we pay them, they are our employees, even if only temporary, are they not?
they are they receive stipend. It's not salary. So they are volunteers who receive stipend for the work they perform for the election process.
All right. Well,
not hourly, they are not daily. It's a stipend.
Yeah.
I would just point out to you, Alex, that the bill as it currently is stated lists election judges separate from employees of a local board. So I think that there is at least some belief that election judges would not be considered employees. My concern is that although Boris referred to them as election judges, the code does not. And so that is why it's my belief that we have to explicitly be broader, because our elections consist of, now many different types of people doing different types of work for us, and the mail-in ballot process, as Boris has reported earlier, is a huge portion of what we do now.
Well, I might suggest, and my other concerns may ultimately override this, but if we're going to use the term election worker, we might want to define what that means, because it may not be clear to everyone exactly who that's meant to include. Now, there are two other issues I want to raise. The definition of harm, serious injury. And maybe Kevin can answer this, I don't know, but is the intent here to make the threat of physical harm the same as an assault, or is it meant to be encompass threats other than assault, for serious injury? I don't know. My concern is I don't know that we should broaden this to make threats that would not qualify as an assault criminal under this, when they're not criminal under the regular assault statute. The other issue I have is probably the most serious one, and that is the definition of harm includes serious emotional distress, according to the text of the statute. I have a problem with that because that's a very subjective term. It's not defined. If the intent here is to import the common law tort of intentional infliction of emotional distress into the criminal code, I would oppose that. I think it's unwise. I've had some experience with that tort in my former law practice. It's very difficult to prove. Almost all of those claims fail, and it's defined very strictly by the judicial decisions that have established it. But I don't think it belongs in the criminal code, and my concern is that this will be abused, or could be abused, because we live in an age when people can claim emotional distress about almost any kind of criticism that under an objective standard would not qualify as a legitimate threat of harm. So the bill as it currently stands, I would urge that we not support it because of this emotional distress definition. That's very concerning for me. I don't think it's necessary. And it's going to be fraught with peril for the future. Thank you, Mr. President.
Kevin, did you have anything you wanted to say?
As to Alex's first point in terms of severe physical harm, I think it is akin to an assault. I think that's the way it would be analyzed. In terms of severe emotional distress, I'm not so sure it is akin to what you and I know as the tort of intentional infliction of emotional distress. I do agree with you that it is, I think our Supreme Court has referred to it as a rare tort and to be sparingly utilized and recognized in the civil context.
And if the intent here is to make it broader than the common law tort as defined in Maryland and many other state decisions, then my concerns are only heightened. But
let me just say that it is not hard to imagine a physical threat that does not cause serious bodily injury, but that would cause serious emotional distress, such as, I know where you live and I'm coming to get you, which I'm not sure if that would necessarily fit the definition of being a threat of serious injury, but is certainly a threat of serious a threat that the harm would be serious emotional distress. But just as you say, Alex, that in this day and age, people can claim serious emotional distress, and I don't disagree with you. In this day and age, you know, there are many more threats against people than there used to be. And to me, that is kind of the balance that we are attempting to strike. Anyway, Diane.
Yeah, it's my mute. You can hear me?
Yep.
Pretty much close to territory I cover.
Diane, you're coming and going.
All right, can you hear me now?
Now I can hear you. Stay near your microphone.
Okay. Alex pretty much plowed the ground I was going to cover, so I agree with what he said. I had originally, I want to preface by saying I'm in full support of the notion that we need to be able to have safe and orderly election processes paramount to our system of government. So I am completely supportive of measures that will make them as safe as possible. I think that this bill falls short because it is fatally flawed in my mind in that it's vague and overbroad to the point that Alex was making on severe emotional distress. I think that that is too general a term. I think that anytime a change is made, a significant change in the criminal code, one should move with restraint. And I think that this, like as in most legislation, the devil's in the details. I think in this case, it's the opposite. There aren't enough details. I think it's overbroad. And I don't think it does what we would intend it to do, balanced with broadening such an area that would infringe on First Amendment rights when the harm is so subjective. So rather than discuss broadening the definition of those covered by this, I can't support the bill at the first step. And I know I'm outnumbered on this, but for that reason, I'll be voting no.
Daniel.
Thank you, Mr. President. And just to be clear, the motion that you introduced that was seconded by my colleague Kina was to make sure that all who were participating in the election process were covered under the bill. Is that correct?
Right. It was to support the bill and to support an amendment to add the election workers so that all who are participating in the who are participating as administering the election are included. That was the motion.
And my last question is, if I heard you correctly, this was a vote that the previous board, which was a Republican-led board, had voted on. Is that correct?
I believe that's.
We approved in concept,
Right.
Daniel, the notion of a legislative priority that would criminalize assaults against election officials. But at the time, back when we took this vote, there was no bill text that we had before us. So conceptually, we approved that. But when you come down, you've got to look at the text of the bill that's before us. And for the reasons I expressed, I have very serious concerns about this. But conceptually, we approved it, but not in the form that it is now.
David, I would like to hear your answer, sir.
Well, I will have to pull, and I can while you all are talking, I can probably do it on my computer. What it is that we voted on on the last board. My recollection is the same as Alex's in the sense that it was not a specific bill. It was what I had done was I had found the Colorado statute that made it a crime to threaten an election official. I had attached that to the proposal that I put before the last board, and I said, let's pass something like it. Now, I did not say let's pass this particular language. So Alex is correct in that that the language of the Colorado bill was not before us. But I will say that there's a long history of threatening people is criminal in many different contexts. So to say that it infringes on First Amendment principles is only to say that it involves speech. It doesn't really there's no question that there will be some situations where there would be question about that, and the courts will have the opportunity to rule on that. My own view is that given that we have legislation in front of us, the legislation has been vetted by the state prosecutor, who would in most cases be the prosecutor of such things. There have been instances of threats against election officials, including election directors in other parts of the state of Maryland. This is not an area in which I'd like Montgomery County to be the leader in terms of receiving such threats. But I certainly would want, if we are going to have legislation that protects our board, that protects our election director, that protects our employees, I would also like it to protect the others who are aiding in this election process. It is not hard to imagine a situation where Dropbox attendants who are going from Dropbox to pick up ballots could get threatened. It's just, has it happened in Montgomery County? Not to my knowledge. Lots of things haven't happened in Montgomery County that we still are concerned about because they've happened in other places, and we don't want them to happen in Montgomery County.
Yeah. Thank you, sir.
And
before I come back to Alex and Diane, is there anyone else who wants to speak for the first time? Okay. I don't know who was first because I saw Alex first, but okay, Diane, you go ahead.
I just want to say I've got the document, David. I would really appreciate, and thank you for doing the search. If you could get what we passed, I mean, it won't change my mind on this bill as written, and I want to underscore as written because I want to make a point of supporting what we passed.
Well, let me suggest to you, Diane, that
I wanted to just read to you the verbiage that we have from our first, the end of November.
Okay.
The point that we said point number 7 that we then used for the list that we all agreed on was simply stated, make it a crime to threaten or assault an election worker at voting locations and at canvass. And I certainly support that. I additionally absolutely support protecting those who are handling the ballots in remote locations at the drop boxes, in transit. And so in theory, I am in unison. I have problems with the details that are not present in this bill, and the notion that it creates it changes the criminal code and
Diane, what we said in November would change the criminal code, and you
yes,
voted
but
for, and you
I didn't
voted for
finish
it.
the sentence. Bringing in the emotional distress, I just think is too subjective. It casts too wide a net. It just opens up, I think it looks like a lawyer's paradise.
So how would you
In theory,
handle
I can't
how would
support it with the details.
all right, well, let me just say that I also have some problems with the details. That's why I'm proposing an amendment. That does not mean that I'm against the bill because I don't because of the amendment, because it needs the amendment. I'm supporting the bill with the amendment. If you support this as you say you do, you also could propose an amendment and not necessarily just vote no, because um, we all have things about, and every bill, as you know, involves compromise, involves, some people have different perspectives as to what they want to include. Um, but this is the bill that, we have a chance in this session of the legislature to pass an emergency bill that would apply to this upcoming election, um, in an area that there have been numerous issues across the country and some issues across the state. So you and I both know that if we simply vote no and defeat this piece of legislation, it will be at least a year and another election, both primary and general, before we can pass legislation along these lines. So I will be happy to continue to look for what we did at the beginning of 2023, and see if I can find that document. But I will point out to you that, I also could have just said, well, it doesn't include canvassers and Dropbox attendants, so I'm going to vote against it. Well, no, I'm going to try and get them to amend it so that it does what I think it should do. Now, I don't necessarily agree with you about intentional infliction of emotional distress. No one has yet answered the question of what you do about, if I say, uh, I know where you live and I'm coming to your house, um, certainly I wasn't saying that so I can come over for tea.
That's an
Um,
assault. That would
is
be
it?
prosecuted as an assault. But let's remember, Mr. President, this bill, whether it passes the General Assembly or not, does not depend on the vote we take today. This is all about whether the board should support the bill that has been presented to us.
No,
The-
it is more than that, Alex. It is about supporting the amendment to include a wider range of our election workers, because the bill as it currently stands does not do that. Um, and um, and you underestimate, perhaps, I may overestimate, but you underestimate our board's ability to influence this. I think there are a number of Montgomery County legislators who are in key positions in the legislature relating to elections, including the chair and vice chair of the Senate committee and that has jurisdiction over elections, and the chair of the elections subcommittee, who is the vice chair of the House Ways and Means Committee, which has jurisdiction over elections. So we actually do have a pretty good voice from people who know us to hear what we have to say. Um, and so I mean, obviously, we could always take the position that we shouldn't say anything about legislation because we're not certain that it will affect the result. But I personally believe that it's important. We need to recruit canvassers. We're going to be under a lot of pressure to get our ballots counted in in an expeditious fashion, particularly in the general election, also in the primary, but particularly in the general election. If we are recruiting canvass workers, it is not too much to ask that we make sure that legislation that has a pretty good chance of passage includes them.
Problem
And
with that's a fine idea. As long as if we defined what election worker means, I think we should spell it out. Who's included and who's not. So that's fine.
Who would you not include as to who is an election worker, Alex?
Well, what about?
It seems to me that as long as we're talking about people who are assisting in the administration of the election and are not simply campaigning outside.
That's what I mean. If you define it that way, then yes, it's fine. But David, there's an underlying problem here. Would you support the bill if we ask that be amended to delete serious emotional distress from the definition?
No, I would not.
And
I
it
would
has-
not. I'm one vote,
No.
but I would not, because I have not yet heard a good explanation for. I personally think that language is needed, because I think that there are many different kinds of threats that will deter people from serving in these crucial roles that they serve in for us and for the citizens of Montgomery County. So, no, I would not delete intentional infliction of emotional distress.
Well, it's not that. It could be broader than that. It doesn't say that. It doesn't say intentional infliction. It just says emotional distress. So let's say someone decided to say that because a certain state board member handled themselves in a certain way, that they are going to lobby against their reappointment. And that board member decided that, felt a serious emotional distress because of that so-called threat. Could this be prosecuted under that statute? And the way it's defined, it could be. So there, it's under inclusive and over inclusive. There could, I think I'm coming to your house. To me, that's prosecutable as an assault. But this definition is so wide that it could cover many kinds of things, because the emotional distress doesn't have to be measured by an objective standard. We don't even know whether it's coterminous with the common law tort, which it may not be. It may be broader than that. And in no instance have I ever seen the concept even of intentional infliction having been imported into the criminal law. It's never been done that in the history of this state, as far as I can tell.
Well, there is a mens rea requirement for criminal acts.
Right.
The language of the bill is: a person may not knowingly and willfully make a threat to harm an election official or an immediate family member of an election official because of the election official's role in administering the election process. So that by definition means that, number one, if an election official includes an election worker, it does not include a campaigner who is outside of the polls, because they don't have a role in administering the election process. And number two, the threat to harm has to be knowing and willful. So
it's an intentionality requirement in the common law tort as well, as you know, right? So again, your proposal about including election workers to me is not terribly controversial. If we just make sure that it's defined to be those who administer the election, who are charged with administering the election.
Well, that's already in the bill, Alex.
I want to add to
you all said the devil's in the details. The details are that the bill already says that it has to be for administering the election. There's no need to define it. That would be redundant.
No, it wouldn't be.
Yes, it would.
The way it's defined in the statute is that's the intent for a threat to an election official because of that official's role. That's the motivation for the threat. It seems to me you could it's a little bit more solid by saying election workers are X, Y, and Z. But again, I think that's not worth spending time on. It's this emotional distress piece that I have a problem with. So you know my position on this.
Okay, I've been seeking to share my screen, but I can't find on my share my screen the screen that includes the language of this bill. but because I wanted everybody to be able to see it. But the language of this bill is a person may not knowingly and willfully make a threat to harm an election official or an immediate family member of an election official because of the election official's role in administering the election process. So to me, that makes clear that it is
Or
excuse me.
there's more. I want to add when I get a chance, another component.
Feel free.
Okay.
Go ahead. Go
I
ahead.
didn't interrupt you. I didn't.
You did interrupt me, but that's okay. Go ahead.
Okay. There's also one other fatal flaw that I see in the bill, and that is that a threat not only can be oral, which is what we've been talking about, but 3805, section 6, paragraph 3, a threat in any written form, whether or not the writing is signed, or if the writing is signed, whether or not it is signed with a fictitious name or any other mark. These could be anonymous threats that somebody could say came from somebody. I find
Well,
it.
you have to prove it. But
Well, yeah, but
the
if
fact
it's
that you don't sign
criminal
if I send you a threatening message, Diane, and I don't sign it, I'm not stupid enough to sign it. And I send you a threatening message, and it turns out to be from me. Do you think that I should be able to skate, or do you think that I've committed a criminal act by threatening you, even though I didn't sign it?
I'm talking about whether somebody wants to anonymously send something or attribute it to somebody else. I mean, you've got to look at the fact that if it's a criminal
Right.
code violation, you can be arrested by mistake, and this is a huge hole to drive a truck through.
It is not. I'm
think the
sorry.
bill
I
has
will
too
just say,
efficiencies, and I mean, there's no point arguing it
okay.
because
Well, no, there is
for me,
point.
I,
Okay. Then I'll take back my time, and I will just say that it would be ridiculous to, in my opinion, to not criminalize an anonymous threat if one can prove who made it. Obviously, you cannot prosecute a ghost, but if you know who made an anonymous threat through a variety of different investigative means, and I'm pretty sure that there are situations where anonymous threats have been prosecuted before. But if you can find out who has made such a threat and it otherwise meets the requirements of the statute, of course it should be prosecuted. The fact that someone doesn't sign their name to a criminal act does not mean that they didn't commit a criminal act, and it does not mean that you can't find proof as to who they are. So from my perspective, that is, I mean, you're obviously trying to suggest that the bill has holes in it, and that's certainly your right. I think the bill is pretty tightly drafted. I think that it is worthy of our support. I think it does need the amendment to make it more inclusive of the people who administer our elections, and that's why I am suggesting that the board take that position. I have not yet had time because I was trying to watch and listen to my colleagues to pull what we did in January. Do people want me to do that before we take a vote on this motion?
I can vote without it.
I think we can proceed, Mr. President.
Okay, the question is on the president's motion, and we'll do this by roll call vote. A vote yes is a vote for supporting the bill with the amendment, and a vote no is a vote against that. Daniel,
I vote yes.
Ami,
I vote yes.
Kina,
I vote yes.
Diane,
I vote no.
and I vote yes. It passes 4-1. Okay, the second bill, which I hope is going to, I thought that one was not terribly controversial. I hope this one is less controversial. But what do I know in terms of what is controversial? I'm moving that the board, in this case, I'm not asking for an amendment. I'm doing exactly the opposite. I'm asking for no amendment. I move that the board support House Bill 371 and Senate Bill 115 as introduced. And this is legislation to codify how local boards handle recounts, and that the board oppose the Senate passed amendment. And once it's before the board, I will explain my position further. Is there a second to my motion? Ami, you're muted again, but I read your
I'll
lips.
second. Yeah, I'll second. Just get it going.
Okay, thank you for getting it going. So you guys know we've had more than our share of experience with recounts. We had a District 16 and a county executive recount in 2018. We had a county executive recount in 2022. I want to congratulate and thank the sponsors of the legislation for codifying what we in Montgomery County already do. I also want to thank and congratulate our staff for what I consider to be the best practices that we are following, which is the very important step of keeping the original ballots and the duplicated ballots together so that any recount can take another look at the ballot duplications to both check for duplication errors and to revisit the voter intent decisions that are made by the board. My understanding is that there are some election officials elsewhere in the state who may be opposing the legislation, saying that it would be overly burdensome to do what the bill requires. But we have more duplicated ballots than any other Maryland jurisdiction. And quite frankly, I think if we can do it, so can they. We've heard for many years about the importance of having a state system of voting, and we think that this legislation codifies best practices. Now, why am I opposing the Senate passed amendment? The original Senate bill basically required that that in the case of a ballot duplication, that the original and the duplicate ballot both be reviewed, and did not speak to the voter intent decisions, but elsewhere in the code, the voter intent decisions give our board the both right and duty to try and determine voter intent in analyzing how a particular marking or vote should be counted. And while I don't believe that this was the intent of the drafters of the amendment language is both unnecessary and causes a problem by using language calling for local boards to consider voter intent in deciding whether to count original ballots or their duplicates for an automated recount, but requiring that we use only original ballots for a manual recount without any language concerning voter intent. Now, I'm going to kind of repeat that because I think that's really important. There is voter intent language about automated recounts, but not about manual recounts. In the law, there is a rule of statutory construction that basically says if the legislature uses language in one place and doesn't use it in another, the assumption is that it was done on purpose. And of course, that's almost a requirement because when you look at legislative language, you can't get in the heads of the people who enacted it. You can only really look at what they did. So my concern is in the following situation. A voter marks a circle next to my name, then they cross it out and they mark the circle next to Diane's name. They circle it, they draw an arrow towards it, and they say this one towards her name. Then the original ballot, which is going to have a circle next to Diane's name and a circle next to my name, would ordinarily be counted as an overvote, even though in the situation that I just described, they crossed out mine, they circled hers, they wrote an arrow there and said this one. That would be one of our easier cases of deciding that they intended to vote for Diane and not for me. In that circumstance, we need to be able to make that voter intent determination. That is, in fact, the most frequent way that the vote count changes in a recount situation is in situations where the scanner would normally count something as an overvote. What we have as a board, what we want to do as a board is to look at the original, look at the duplicate, see if we still believe that our intent of the original ballot remains the same, see if the duplicate accurately reflects that, and then count the ballot. We don't want there to be any argument that that we are not able to consider the intent of the voter in that situation. And as a result, I think the amendment adds a problem that we do not need. And so I would ask that we support the bill as introduced. And it was introduced in both the House and the Senate in that fashion. Alex.
What is your understanding of the current state of the law about the selection of methods? Why do you think they are now requiring the selection of only one of the following methods? Is that because the current law allows them to select an automated recount and then a manual recount?
I defer to Kevin on that one.
No, but the law actually is a little unclear because it does allow for a random recount, which they've never really implemented a process by which to do that. So this bill it basically would require the entire state, if there's no amendment to it, would require the entire state to follow the practice that Montgomery County has followed for both the recounts in 2018 and 2022.
And what procedures were those? Just about the keeping of both sets of ballots, or was it about voter intent?
Both.
The voter intent. What is the current state of the law regarding that? Does the election law article, direct us to consider voter intent in whether it's a ballot cast at a polling place or by mail, or was that simply done by regulation, or is it just simply the practice of what we've done?
No, by law, the board is required to determine voter intent if it's not clearly apparent from either the person doing the canvas work or it's a ballot that wouldn't scan properly.
Now, if the ballot was cast at a polling place and it was otherwise would have been as an overvote in the example that David described, if the person was at a polling place, would the scanner then give the voter a message that sometimes happens when it says you have overvoted? Would you like to continue, yes or no?
It does tell the voter that they have overvoted a race.
And gives them an opportunity to have the ballot come back out and they can spoil it and then start again. Is that correct?
That's what they would need to do, yes.
And if the voter chose not to do that, then I guess does the election law article still require us to consider voter intent for such a ballot in a recount?
Yes, because the voter may have made certain notations on the ballot itself that makes it clear what the voter intent is.
And my concern is that this amendment would take away that, or could take away that provision when a manual recount is concerned. And in my opinion, whether it's a manual recount or machine recount, and we could probably all argue for days as to which one is better. But either way, to me, the intent determination should be the same. We either consider intent or we don't. I personally think it's a good thing that we consider intent. I think that there's lots of ballots, not a huge number, but there's certainly, more than a handful of ballots, as anyone who's been through the canvass knows, where we do have to make those determinations, and it could, it doesn't. We haven't had a change or a final winner yet, but it definitely changes numbers. So that's where I'm coming from. Alex, did you have more?
No, I think that's it. I guess so. If the law currently requires us to determine voter intent, no matter how the ballot was cast, I guess that is it. And that's what we've been doing. I've never been entirely comfortable with changing the outcome that the scanner would have done. It's one thing like if we are in canvassing mail-in ballots, so that's the first time it's being looked at. I've never been comfortable with when a ballot was cast at a polling place and a person intentionally overvoted or decided not to have the ballot come back on and start over again, where it was not counted or it was counted as an overvote, and then we changed the result at the recount. But if that's what the law requires, it's what the law requires.
I would also add that I wouldn't describe it the same way you just did, because the fact that a voter has been told that they overvoted in a particular race does not mean necessarily that they intentionally overvoted in the race that we're talking about, because some voters pay different amounts of attention to those individual things. If somebody did do like I suggested, where they voted for me, they crossed it out, they voted for Diane, they circled it, they put an arrow there, they may not realize that our scanner won't figure that out. So I don't know if that means that they intentionally overvoted. But in any event, I personally am very comfortable with trying to, to discerning what the voter intended to do. And I think that is what the law requires. I don't see any reason why the law should require something different for a manual recount than for an automated recount, as far as that goes.
Yeah, I don't necessarily disagree with you. As written, I guess the amendment seems not as good as the bill as drafted. What do you think were the reasons why the Senate amendment was offered?
I think that there was a misunderstanding of what it meant to count the original, is the best guess I would have. I think that it's possible that the sponsors, and I think likely that the sponsors were not saying that we shouldn't consider intent, but they were not paying as close attention to the drafting of the legislation. Well, I shouldn't say what they were paying attention to. I don't know what they were paying attention to. I think that the way the bill is drafted is the problem, because of the use of intent language for one type of recount and not for the other. I'd be surprised if the people who want us to, quote unquote, count the original meant for us to not consider intent. I think what they meant for us to do is to not assume that the duplication was correct. And we don't assume that the duplication is correct. We look at all of the duplications, as you know. And as you also know, for all of 2018, there wasn't a single duplication error in the entire recount. So, and I think we may have had one or two in 2022, but it's a minuscule number of duplication errors. But that doesn't change the fact that if there are one or two, we have to look at them. I mean, that's the purpose of the recount. So I don't have any problem with telling people that we have to relook at duplications and make sure that they were duplicated properly as part of the recount. I do have a problem with saying count the original without being really explicit as to what that means. And I think that the rest of the code provides that framework already, and the rest of this bill provides that framework already that says, you review both of them, and then and then you decide what the correct vote is. But I do worry that the amendment could change that.
What feedback have you received from your advocacy on this point?
So far, I have received concern and the expression that it is likely to be fixed on the House side, but I have not gotten confirmation of that fact yet. And to me, it's important that our representatives, both in the House and the Senate, hear from us officially on this point. Like I said, we may be the most experienced in recounts, local board in the state. There's really two different questions. One is, is it too hard to keep originals and copies together? I'm sure it's not easy, but on the other hand, if we're doing it, smaller counties should be able to do it. And then secondly, it's, it's making sure that 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 the process that we've been following does not get changed unintentionally, because that's what I really think is happening here. Diane,
Wait.
you are muted, and I don't think Alex is quite done.
No, I meant you said you thought that was happening with the Senate amendment. Is that what you meant?
Yes, I think the Senate amendment could change the process in a way that is unintended. I think that the bill as introduced would codify what we have been doing and what others apparently may not have been. And there were a number of other recounts. I don't know who does and who doesn't do this, but there were a number of recounts in 2018. I don't remember whether there were other recounts in 2022. I doubt that anyone has had our experience of having as close a recount 2 elections in a row for the same office. That one was, I don't think anyone would have put much money on that.
The only thing I would say is I wouldn't want to be comfortable leaving the decision about whether to determine voter intent to SBE regulation. I think the General Assembly should state that explicitly. I would be more comfortable with that, but otherwise, I don't have a problem.
It does sound like, from what I understand from what Kevin said, that the statute already says that. Is that my understanding correctly, Kevin?
The statute provides that the local board of canvassers determines the voter intent.
Perfect. I think that gets at what Alex just said, so that there's not a need for regulation to tell us what to do on that if the legislature has already told us, as long as they don't untell us. I wouldn't want the code to say that we consider intent when we count the first time, but when we do a recount, we don't. Or when we do a recount, we do for automated, but not for manual. I mean, to me, it should, one rule for all is the way I would look at it. Diane.
Yeah, Kevin and Alex hit on the last point about the state board having the discretion. And what I was going to add earlier, it's encouraging that in the feedback you've been getting, there has been no rousing defense or explanation for the discrepancy. So
in some ways that's encouraging. In other ways, it could have been fixed at an earlier stage.
Yeah, but
so
easier to support what you're trying to do.
Yes, I'm not aware of a strong opponent to what I'm trying to do, but on the other hand, what I'm trying to do may not be transparent to everyone yet. So as you know, anything can draw opposition.
Yeah.
So anyway, any other comments on this motion? Okay, we'll move to a vote. Quick roll call. Daniel.
I vote yes.
Ami.
I vote yes.
Kina.
I vote yes.
Diane.
Aye.
And I vote yes, and it is unanimous. And thank you all very much. Does anyone have any other item of legislation that you would like to discuss today? All right, seeing none, we will move to the outreach update. Dr. Zelaya.
Jerry, can you promote Dr. Z?
Good afternoon, good evening.
Okay, great to see you, Dr. Z.
How are you? How are you, friends?
Good.
So busy. As you saw in the overall calendar for the month of February and March, we had approximately 84 events scheduled. While the meeting's been taking place, we've added about half a dozen more events. So we are becoming to, we're getting noticed. So there's a lot of requests from the community for the team to come out to serve our voters, whether it's to register to vote, whether it's to submit an application to place a request to vote by mail, or to serve as a future vote ambassador or an election worker. We are there to provide information so individuals could prepare and make a vote plan. We continuously collaborate with Montgomery County Public Schools, public libraries, MC Votes, which is the voting arm of Montgomery College, and working with the Office of Community Partnerships, the Regional Services Center, and organizations and nonprofits, as listed on the calendar itself. Gratitude to the team internally, recruitment, staff, voter registration for really helping us expedite those voter registration, especially when they come from poll workers. As you know, the requirements to serve in said capacity, you must be a registered voter in Maryland. So when they submit that application, it comes hand in hand with the voter registration application. So gratitude to the voter registration team with everything else that they're working on in the current election. We're going to initiate this coming Saturday, our Saturday service information table at local public libraries. That advisory will go out tomorrow. I was wanting to push the social media for today's meeting. That will go out. We'll be visiting 3 libraries at any given Saturday to meet the voters where they live. At any given time, we will be up county, down county, east or west county. So we're floating around the county to serve. And that's always been a good event to meet individuals halfway, especially if they have questions that they want to hear from a staff members other than what's already on our website. But that, person-to-person interaction really provides that transparency and also comfort to our staff and what we do on a daily basis. And we continue to visit the school system. We have some events scheduled with Bullis and Don Bosco Cristo Rey in Tacoma Park. So we're still establishing that relationship with them as well. And I want to thank the team, also the board. Anytime there's an event, by all means, send them my way. I know recently we're going to coordinate with the African Diaspora Advisory Committee. Also, a shout out to Kina, working with the liaison, Harriet. Several months back, there was an engagement opportunity and they were showcasing and I have that as an app, the African Diaspora, an app that provides information in the community that would help individuals. It's called the MoCo African Affairs Advisory Group. I then, after saw that opportunity, I reached out to the African Diaspora Liaison, and I'd like to share that we have since added election-related information to that app. So we've expanded that. So anytime there's any opportunities that you see, nothing's too big, nothing's too small. If you see a flyer, just take a picture, text it to me, and I'll follow up. So whatever it takes, we're going to meet our voters halfway to assist them and to facilitate their to make a vote plan. And that's all I have to report.
That sounds great. Thank you for that. I love the idea that you've added our election information to someone else's app. That's just perfect. And I appreciate your doing that. Any comments or questions for Dr. Zelaya? Daniel.
Mr. President, thank you. And again, Dr. Zelaya, excuse me, has always been, I would say, a fixture in all our communities, and he's been responsive. So I know my colleague Kina definitely will get that feedback because there are many within our diverse community here in Montgomery County that get their information through social media and through apps like this. So traditional media does not reach many, especially our diverse community. And the good thing about those apps is it also helps out with, in terms of, like if they want, whoever gets the information, they can come directly to the Board of Elections. So they don't have to get it secondhand at all. And so to me, that's the piece that I like. So thank you, Dr. Z, for preparing, because it's usually not easy to take some of our information and then put it into a format that can easily and readily be read through an app. So thank you for that work and all the staff for the work.
Our pleasure.
Anything else for Dr. Zelaya? I'll just say, Dr. Z, thank you for your follow-up on the event on Saturday with the Senate debate, which I imagine will be well attended, which means it'll be good for us to be there. Unfortunately, I don't think I'll be able to be there, but I know that you'll be carrying the flag well, as you always do.
My pleasure.
So, thank you. Okay, we will move on in the agenda. The next item on the agenda is new business. We have two polling place changes to consider. Should I be turning this over to Boris or to Mindy?
Mindy will take over.
Okay.
Sorry, I had to Boris is still on. Figure out how to unmute myself. Okay, hopefully the last presentation that you guys will receive from me prior to the 24 election cycle would be the remaining two polling place changes for this cycle. We're going to talk about 0705, formerly Rollingwood School Center, and then 1367, which is formerly Don Bosco Cristo Rey. We'll start with 0705, the reason for the relocation. There's unforeseen construction and repairs that need to happen to the 22 location. So we're looking, our recommendation would be to relocate to Meadowbrook Local Park, which is a 0.2 mile walk across a footbridge from the 22 location, or from door to door if you walk out Beach Drive, across, turn right on East West Highway, and then down Meadowbrook, it's a total of 1.2 miles. Public transit is 0.7 miles from the East West Highway and Beach Drive bus stop to Meadowbrook Local Park. Ample parking. It's a public facility, so no fee involved. And then, sorry, I gotta move you guys around. Election statistics for 0705 from the 22 gubernatorial. There's 630 in person on election day, 550 mail-in. As of February 22nd, 2024, we had a total of 455 mail-in ballots requests, 415 of which are permanent mail-in ballot requests. Oops. And then just a brief little run through of the facility itself. Meadowbrook Local Park is a Maryland National Capital Park and Planning Commission neighborhood local park. This is just the chart of the changes. It would be a 1-for-1 change from Rollingwood to Meadowbrook. This is just our map that depicts the distance. It's again, 0.2 mile walk across a footbridge from Rollingwood to Meadowbrook, or a 1.2 mile drive. Photos of the room itself. The actual voting room is 1,500 square feet, which is plenty of space for what we need for this particular precinct. Voter entrance, voting room, as well as an aerial photo. Public transportation. So as you can see, there's a number of bus stops close to the location. There's several here on Leland Street. However, they do not serve, they're not consistent. So they don't run consistently weekdays. So the best, I did my footwork on the East West Highway bus stop, which is 0.7 miles from the bus stop to the front door of Meadowbrook. That concludes 0705. 1367. 1367, we're relocating due to not extending the lease for the previous location. Our recommendation would be to consolidate with the polling place for 1321, which is Tacoma Park Middle School, Piney Branch Road. It's a public facility, has ample parking on site, plus additional street parking. It's located in the adjacent precinct 1321. It is 1 I think that says 8, I can't see.
Yes.
1.8 miles from the previous location, and public transportation is literally right out front. It's 390 feet from the actual bus stop to the entrance of the school, to the voter entrance. An alternate option would be to consolidate with 1368, which is Tacoma Park Recreation Center. Yet another public facility, limited parking, 42 parking spaces. Tacoma Park would be serving the general public during their regular business during the times that the polls would be open, so parking would be an issue. Distance from the previous location is 0.6 miles, and public transit again is right out front, which is 0.1 miles to there. This is just a breakdown of the 22 election statistics for all 3 locations, 1367, 1321, as well as 1368. Tacoma Park Middle School. This would be our recommendation, consolidate with Tacoma Park Middle School. We'd be looking at a total of 5,028 registered voters if consolidated. The space within Tacoma Park Middle School is a little over 5,000 square feet. So it goes in line with, I believe we're planning to utilize the gyms for 9 of our early voting sites. So spatially similar. This is our distance map, 1.8 miles from the previous location to the new voting room, 5,000 plus square feet. Another view. And then just a rundown of the specs. The room used would be the cafeteria, number of parking spaces, public space, transit, as well as ADA compliant. Our transportation map that depicts the parking, the transportation stops and voter entrance. And then option 2, Tacoma Park Recreation Center. If consolidated, would bring us to 3,850 voters. It's a little bit closer than Tacoma Park Middle School at 0.6 miles. A little over, close to 4,500 square feet for the voting room. List of all of our specs. Public transportation map. And then that would be all. Any questions?
So Mindy,
Okay.
my recollection is we were able to utilize Don Bosco. It was facilitated by a city council member when the city moved their elections to coincide when the general election was, and they could co-locate in those locations. Have you had a chance to look at how that would look for November in terms of a room that they would have for their municipal election?
I have not. What, the Don Bosco or Tacoma Park Middle School?
Well, don't we have those locations that are in the municipal limits of Tacoma Park? Don't they co-locate and have their city election in the same location as the general election is?
I believe it used to be, however, I was just informed that they are doing it all by mail now.
Okay.
So we would not be cohabitating with them during November, during the November election.
Okay. Sounds
May-
good.
may-
Thank you.
May I just add here very briefly that in our effort to find the location that would be Don Bosco or around Don Bosco within the precinct, we did consult with the Tacoma Park election official. We spoke to Jesse on it, and the options were limited there.
You're right, Gordon. I'm showing my age. I forgot they had gone to vote by mail as opposed to doing any in-person voting.
Yeah, there's not an incredible amount of facilities in that area, that would
Very
be.
little,
Mhm.
very
Well,
little.
and I'll just point out, I don't remember which year it was that I got sent to that precinct at the rec center because of very long lines there, and also a very difficult parking situation. And so from my perspective, I support the staff recommendation because I'm also very familiar with the Tacoma Park Middle School. My daughter went there many years ago. And that cafeteria, as Mindy said, it could be an early voting site. It's large enough to be an early voting site, and that doesn't even take the gymnasium into consideration. But in any event, the chair will entertain a motion to either support the staff recommendations or whatever else you guys want to move.
Yeah, I move we support staff recommendations as presented.
I'll second.
Okay, moved by Diane and seconded by Ami. Is there any discussion? Okay, quick roll call vote. Daniel?
I vote yes.
Okay, Ami?
I vote yes.
Okay. I can't tell whether Kina, are you on?
Yes, I am. I
Okay,
vote yes.
okay, Diane?
I,
Okay, and I vote yes, so it is unanimous. Mindy, thank you very much for your work on this. If this was your last presentation before our election, I congratulate you, realizing that that's not really within your control. Boris.
David, may I just interrupt very briefly?
Yeah.
What is the vote for both changes?
That is the vote for both changes,
Okay, thank you.
right? As I understood Diane's motion, it was to support the staff recommendation on both changes. We were being unusually efficient, Boris. So and
Thank you.
and thank you for that, Diane. Okay, future action items from today's meeting.
I wrote down two for myself. Action item number one, that it's to look at the possible location for sign on the 108 towards Sandy Spring.
Yes.
And the second one is to find the place on the website to easy access non-electioneering zone maps.
Perfect.
So these are the two that I wrote down for myself for us to figure out for the next board meeting.
Okay, I'm going to add one that we haven't discussed, which is if it's easy, and only if it's easy, on our board website, where when we looked up the election workers, if we could put getting started closer to the top of that list, that would make your board president happy. Because right now it's like 6 down. And it's harder to see. So I'd like to make sure that the getting started is easily seen. If it's not easy, then don't bother, because it's only, not worth a lot of time. I also have a follow-up for myself, which is to communicate our views on the legislation to the appropriate legislative leaders. And I will do that very soon, because the way the legislature works, if you don't do it soon, it's too late. And thank you for that. Any other action items that people think we should be on our list for today? Okay, we have one set of minutes from our January. I believe that I sent I think a number of us had different amendments to those minutes. Ami,
I move that we accept those minutes as amended.
okay, is there a second?
I second.
Okay, moved by Ami and seconded by Daniel. Is there any discussion? Okay, do a quick roll call vote. Daniel,
I vote yes.
Ami,
I vote yes.
Kina,
I vote yes.
Diane,
Aye.
and I vote aye. So it is unanimous. Okay, that is excellent. So the next and final thing, I believe, before we go into our executive session, is our future meetings. And we have our March meeting on March the 18th. We have our regular April meeting on April the 15th. Our April the 15th meeting will be, I was going to say an in-person meeting. It'll be in person for those who can be in person, and we will figure out ways to make it also available for people to um, to participate remotely. But we are going to be sworn in as members of the Board of Canvassers on April the 15th in person at the board office. On April the 22nd, as is noted on the agenda, we will begin the primary election canvass. I did want to mention to the board and the public that we are seriously considering having a Zoom meeting to open to candidates and campaigns and political parties in advance of the primary, in order that we may let them know about various things relating to the primary, such as when the ballots go out, when the drop boxes are available, what the no electioneering zones look like, where they can find them, that kind of thing. This would be a new thing that we have not done, at least in recent memory. I think we've communicated with them, but we haven't necessarily had a meeting. And the idea would be just to get the word out in one additional way. And the thought at the moment is to have that meeting roughly around the time that the first set of ballots get mailed out, so that it would be sufficiently in advance that people can know what's going on. We will have more about that as time goes on. Diane, you have your hand up.
Yeah, is the April, wait. Yeah, can you hear me?
Yes,
Okay.
we can.
The April 15th meeting is the open time at 2:30 for swearing in. That, I mean, is that an open question right now?
It's not an open question. I emailed Karen Bushel yesterday. She got back to me today and said that she would see us at 2:30 on the 15th at the Board of Elections.
Okay, thanks.
Okay, and the public can witness that if they would like, but it is not going to be the most exciting. We are going to take the oath, sign the book, and then we're going to adjourn until 3 o'clock, unless we change our meeting date. I guess my only question for board members is, once we're all in the same place at 2:30, should we just meet at 2:30, or should we still meet at 3?
Oh,
I don't know if anyone has a strong opinion. If you don't, I'll just figure it out. I will talk to you all. I'll put it to you this way. If anybody thinks that that it would be better to wait until 3 o'clock, just let me know. And we'll let you know whether the April 15th meeting, we still have one more meeting before that. We have the March 18th meeting. That'll be at the normal 3 o'clock. But we'll definitely convene early to have our to get the oath on April the 15th. I thank the board members for their cooperation. We have a closed session after this one. We were emailed, or at least I was, and hopefully you were, the link for that. So having reached the end of the agenda, Kevin, there's no need to vote to do this, to go to executive session. Kevin, you are muted. You're muted, Kevin.
No, you don't have to take a vote.
You already announced the reason for the executive session at the beginning, so that's fine.
Yes. Okay. thank you all very, wait, let me just triple check. Let me just say that the purpose of the executive session is to consider a request under Comar 33.04.02.02, which would be relating to the privacy of an individual that is not necessary to be discussed in public. Kevin, did I have that right?
You have it? Yeah.
Okay,
Yes, you do.
great. Thank you very much. This meeting is adjourned. We'll see you in closed session.
Thanks.
Okay,
Thank you.
Thank you.